Hi everyone, DJ from Westmoreland Gamers Guild again. I'm going into the next part of what I was talking about the other day, and that's actually basing your stands of infantry for Team Yankee. Now as you can see, I got a whole bunch glued on the bases. So when you're doing a base, it's a good idea to go ahead and paint around the outside of the base. Usually with whatever color you're going to use, usually a brown or whatever. A lot of times, excuse me, whenever you do a base, say if you have like multiple squads of infantry or platoons, it's best to put like a little color notch or something in the back end of that. You know what I mean? That kind of helps a little bit. So that way you can know who's who, stuff like that. So when you're basing, I'm doing a traditional base. So what I'm end up doing, I'm actually using flock. You know what I mean? It's a regular old base flock, autumn grass. It's pretty good stuff. And then if I want more of a desert or like more of a dirt feel, then I'll use play sand a lot of times. You know what I mean? It's not too bad. You know, you got some impurities, but you just clean those out. And then another one that I like using, especially on 28 millimeter stuff, is crushed walnut shell. You can get that like pet stores. I think Walmart sometimes actually carries it. The only caveat to that is if you have a nut allergy, obviously you probably shouldn't use it, but it's a really good effect. It's light, it glues on there well, and you can definitely paint it. Now, whenever I'm putting basing material on bases, use like a white glue. I actually prefer the Gorilla Glue. I like using it. It seems to work really well. It dries almost to a clear yellow, which is kind of good. And that's the other thing. When you're doing your bases, a lot of times, especially with flock or other stuff, what ends up happening is if you've primed them all to white and you put your flock down, sometimes you'll see the white through the flock. So it's good to paint them like a neutral color, like a brown. Believe it or not, I've found, especially for bolt action miniatures, if you prime the whole model in whatever color you're using, but if I paint the base in a German field gray, it actually blends in really well with your flock. It's really surprising. I must put this over here. So what I'll end up doing, we'll get started here. Let me move these guys out of the way. I'm horrible at prepping. I'm gonna get better at these videos. So I've already went ahead and I've painted a lot of guys already. I've painted a lot of different around the bases. So it's best to get a good brush and you have your water, especially for this part. You use the water to help liquefy the white glue. Now, since I have my work mat, I'll just go ahead and I'll just squirt a bunch of it if I get it to come out of there. I'll just squirt a bunch of it down onto the play mat. Or in this case, it's not going to happen today. So, wow, I should have opened this beforehand. We're going to get better with this, guys, I promise you. There we go. And there I got some glue. So we'll put him right there in amongst my stand of stuff. Just get your brush wet. Get a nice dollop of glue to where it's underused a lot of times. And you just apply it. You just apply it on a little bit onto their bases. You know what I mean? But you're going to go ahead and you're going to spread that around the model up to the edge. You want on there a little bit thick. You know, that'll work. Okay. Get another little gloop. Now when you're doing this, you want to try to take care as not to get a lot onto the actual guys themselves. And you'll see that here in a minute. Let's get some more, a little bit of water. Kind of get it on there. And you just want to get a nice coat around everything. I got a little mix up there. That's alright. Put that back. Clean off our brush because it will harden your brushes up. Now what I usually do for this, now depending how much glue you have going on, I'll just take the miniature themselves and I'll hold them over the flock, okay? And I'll just take a pinch and I'll just sprinkle it over top of the miniature. I'll turn it to the other side. Just sprinkle it over on top of the miniature, okay? And we get a nice coat. See, there's still some up here in the corner. I'll put some more on that. And then once it's on there, I just go ahead, I'll turn upside down, do a little tap. Okay. As you can see, it's got a nice coat, but you still see white through that. If you can see, that's the actual glue. Okay. Don't be too alarmed, it's going to dry. So what I did, at one part I did get prepped. I had another base I did. As you can see, you can't see any of the white through the miniature. Flocking it's a nice basic thing. It's very simple. You can knock them out pretty quick. Here's a side by side. As you can see, like how you can see the white through and versus the other one. You know what I mean? So it works out pretty well. Now say you want to do some diversity. Okay. Well, again, you take your glue and you would apply some area to the base. Like in this case, I applied some sand to the base. Now the reason I'm doing that is there's like a gravel patch, just a mud patch or whatever. So I applied some of that. This is already hardened, so I can work with it. And then I would take whatever brown I'm going to use. In this case, I'm going to use this shade of brown. Clean my brush out. It's always good to change your water fairly regularly. Luckily I got some new water in here. Especially change it after you do metallics. But again, you just get it on there, and you're just getting that painted up. Okay. Now a lot of times, especially when you're painting texture, you're going to add a little bit more water to your paint than normal just to get it inside of there. Okay. That's going to make the dry time of this a little bit longer. But you're just getting that color in there is all you're doing. Okay. Just getting that color. Try not to hit the model. If you hit their boots, you know what I mean, it's not too big of a deal. So you just paint. Happy little brush strokes. If you can tell, one of my favorite artists is Bob Ross. And then, boom, you have them painted. Now, I've already got something done ahead of time. A lot of times you want to do a dry brush to add more depth to that paint you've already done. Okay, in this case, I already have another group I did up. You can see it's dry. You can see from a little bit from the shadows, it's got a rough texture. So what you want to do is, you want to do a dry brush. So in this case, I'm going to use this German middle stone. So shake it up and put a little drop on my work area, since I'm only doing that guy for today. And again, you're using a wide brush. You notice a lot of times for this basing, I'm using a fairly big brush. You know what I mean? Because I'm not looking for detail work. But you go ahead, get that color on your brush. And a lot of times, you'll take your napkin, whatever you're using, your towel, and you're just going to brush it till you get most of the paint off. And then you're simply going to go ahead and you're going to dry brush over. And you're just getting a little bit of color on there is all you're doing. In this case, it almost looks like, it's hard to see with the camera, but there's just a light color. And the only thing you're doing with a dry brush is you're just hitting the raised edges of the model or the texture you're doing. You know what I mean? Then once you're done dry brushing, you can go ahead, clean your brush off again. And then if you want, look at this guy here, he's ready. I'll get another dollop of glue. And I'll go ahead and I'll start painting the glue on there. Up to, and a little bit overlapping what I just did. So that way it blends in kind of with the model. For the guys, for their bases a lot of times, you can get some glue on their bases. Believe it or not, a lot of it just overlaps on the base fairly well on their bases. You know what I mean? I'm going to put a little bit thicker on this. Glue seems to be drying pretty fast today. My basement's pretty, I do this in my basement. It's fairly dry down here because I've been running the wood burner. I have it off right now so you guys can actually hear me talk. I don't have it off, but you know what I mean. I have the blower off. So, just touch it up. Get my big hand out of there. And if you get some white glue on the model, don't panic. A lot of times you can still flock it, and then when you're done, you can come back and kind of pull that flock off of the guy. Okay. Do a little bit more. Okay. Clean your brush. Just go ahead and nice rain of material. And all you're doing is getting a nice coat on there. See a spot you think you missed, hit it up. And you can add all kinds of other stuff to these bases. You can add like large rocks. You can add make cobblestone walls with them. You can put sticks. I suggest getting them dry. So knock off the extra material. There we go. A little bit of mud mixed in. You know what I mean, with your base. And it looks pretty nice. And if you do that sporadically through your miniatures, what ends up happening is you give like a little bit of a different effect. They all look the same in the plane. Now what I'm not going to do right now, unfortunately, camera, one of the last steps you do with your miniatures, okay, once you're done, and you can do this with 28, Team Yankee, all these guys. Once they're done, a lot of times when you do a traditional grass flock like I just did, believe it or not, the model sheds. The stuff actually comes off over time. So, like you should do for any of your miniature dough, you seal them. Just because, let's be honest, they're little toys, we play with them. They get banged up, you drop them, paint chips. You know what I mean? Models take wear and tear. We all know this. So, what I end up doing is I'll spray them with clear coats. And I'll show you the two that I personally use, one of which was recommended by Norm at Toy Soldier Gallery. You all know Norm. Should have had this on camera already. I apologize for that. Here it is. So the two that I use, because I'll put two different things on the sealed miniature. So the first one I use Krylon matte finish. I shake it up. I'll spray it on the whole miniature. You know what I mean? And I'll let that dry. It's best to do that during a dry day. And don't worry about getting it on the flock. It'll dry clear. It won't leave any like a dew effect or anything like that. But you definitely want to do it when it's dry, because the aerosol being cold, like we know from priming with regular paint, it'll leave moisture. Then I finish it off with Tomaco color for plastics. Now, this is like another seal. What I like about this seal, it seems to dull the model. Now, I paint a lot of my stuff. I try to make mine more realistic, painting-wise, like miniatures, tabletop stuff like that. So I like my colors being dulled down. Now, if you're painting Space Marines or something of the like, and you want them colors to stay super bright and shiny, I don't recommend that. Just Krylon matte finish work fairly well. But if you want to dull them down again, you use this. And honestly, it leaves a hard coat. It's really hard to chip the models, which is nice. Now, when you try to go back to strip the models, boy, it can be a pain in the neck because you have to get through that clear coat. But that's my suggestions. That's some of the stuff that I do for miniatures. And you can take the same process and upscale it to 28. You know what I mean? You can use grass tufts. The reason I don't use too many grass tufts in this scale, they look like small bushes. You know what I mean? Like humongous, like wet grasses. So sometimes I'll do that depending on what I'm doing. And the reason I selected a lot of the dry grass here is I have a play mat that I'm going to put down for my table, and it's got that same static grass look. So my bases will mesh really well with my table. But that's about it. This video is running into 15. I'm going to try to keep them kind of short for you guys. But appreciate you guys watching. We're going to do more stuff. We're going to start getting some battle reports out to yins. This is DJ, I guess the guild master, you could say, of Whistleborn Gamers Guild signing off. You all have a good day.